pulse of the community going on. It's an opportunity to catch up with folks like District 8 Councilman Ben Reno-Weber. Ben, good to have you back here in the OTT studio, by the way.
Thanks for having me.
There's a lot on your plate. Obviously, we're talking about a new year of 2026. I think it's been that long since you and I were able to catch up here in the studio. But talk to me, we could start with things, we're in mid-February, looking ahead on the calendar, and referencing the things that you're wanting to discuss with voters and the citizens. Bardstown Road, we know, such a critical artery. There's so much of value to the community there. When you're talking about a redesign, as you've mentioned, okay, we're moving in phases. Some people might, be chuckling as far as like, okay, I hope my patience isn't tested too much, and what all this is going to entail.
Yeah.
But what's something you're keeping your eyes on, and then for the folks at home who are the constituents, they still have a stake in the process. What's something you're hoping to either hear from them or that they should be abreast of as this still plays out?
I think one of the really interesting pieces about what's going on with the whole Bardstown Road Corridor right now is, we're just seeing great momentum. And part of what's happening is that the story hasn't caught up with the momentum. So in this last year, we will have opened 20 plus businesses, with another 6 slated to open in Q1 of this year. Now we've lost some. I mean, that's some of these are replacements, but we've lost 10 total, one of which is a hookah shop. So I'm not really sad about that. But so we're seeing great momentum. The redesign, I think as people get used to what the next phase of this is, there are implications about that, but they're the implications that come from growth. Mm-hmm. And that's really exciting.
And even with, you might hear these phone calls or the emails about what that growing pain, you could call it that, but just the adjustment of traffic, for example, where it's like, and I know you talk about people who, benefit. It's, because I can think of so many people who drive through Bardstown Road, and that's not even, the people who work, live, and go about their other lives, the other parts of their lives there, but people who rely on Bardstown Road as an easy connection point from A to B. But to the people who care, has this been something they've been clamoring for? Is like something that could be this new evolution of Bardstown Road?
One of the things that is so amazing about the Highlands as a whole is how walkable, bikeable, accessible it is. I mean, this is a major transit corridor. When you talk about Mid-City Market and the library that's there, one of the things we hear over and over again is this is on a bus line. It's easy to get to. I have a disability that means I can't drive, but I can still go to these spaces. And that's great. And then you hear from the neighbors, why did I move here? I moved here because it's walkable, because it's bikeable, because I can get to the parks. And that's, we want to lean into that. I think, you think about the redesign pieces that are happening. What's going on right now is that we have put down striping, and we meaning KSTC. So the state road, Bardstown Road is a state road. They put down striping. Now that striping is down, they're getting feedback on how that is working, and then they will make decisions about what the permanent structure looks like. So from a community engagement perspective, on our website, there is the KSTC feedback form around Bardstown Road. Absolutely fill that out. But this is, we are working to make the whole corridor safer for everyone to get where they're trying to get safely.
And you talk about it would make sense in the redesign for the purpose. And in our conversations, I know how so much of it is interconnected. If you're creating, the infrastructure for people walking and people biking, but this is what they want to really, take advantage of and celebrate and use it at its maximum potential, let's say. But that speaks to perhaps you and I were discussing this conversation around housing and housing density in particular for this part of the town. I don't know, even if it's anecdotally for you, just sort of like where that pressure has been building, people talking to you or sort of these conversations of what does this part of Louisville look like if this is, a solution to the broader conversation about housing and housing affordability as well?
I think what is really interesting, and I was just talking to one of my colleagues across the aisle about this, who's like, well, of course, Bardstown Road, they don't want pickleball, they don't want housing. And I think, that has not been the lived experience of, at least one of the people who gets a ton of feedback about this. What has been really surprising is how many people have said, yes, I want housing, I want density, we want more people in this neighborhood. We want younger people to be able to afford this. And that's, I think, a different narrative than is the traditional not here, not now, not my NIMBY stuff. Like that.
I was about to ask you, it's like we hear that sort of, it is reported about like in certain communities, we will report sometimes on that pushback, just sort of what that development brings, the consequences to property values, et cetera. But even then, if it's a community sort of acknowledging if there is space to build, it seems like that either there's the space or the places where you can seize, where those gaps are and build up or include more people and then dictate whatever they're willing to pay for that housing. It seems like some people want to live in a place like the Highlands and around the state.
Yeah. And what is, so, there are always going to be folks who disagree with any plan. So I always try to add a little levity to this process. So I'll ask you a joke.
Sure.
What is one thing that everyone in the Highlands agrees on?
Beats me. I don't know how this is. Nothing.
Nothing.
And so then it is that. And so it is then that diversity of opinion, but then somehow coalescing around that you could be surprised and say, no, but housing doesn't seem to be something so controversial here.
But it is exactly. I mean, there's always going to be people who say, well, no, if we turn some of the larger houses into apartments
or duplexes
or we let people, easy to build. I mean, one of the things I'm really interested in is creating a fund that will help convert second story units that exist in these retail spaces all along the corridor. They were often intended to be housing, are not currently, could be again. And so how do we make that easier? No one goes down Cherokee Road and says, oh man, that apartment complex here is driving down property values. Right? That is just not actually a thing. People are afraid of that. Some people are. But again, the surprising bit to me is how many people have said, absolutely, we want more people here. Mm-hmm. We need younger people here. We want the people that work in our neighborhood to be able to afford to live in our neighborhood. Mm-hmm.
Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us for tonight's edition of Wave News Extra. Do you think that the word I think I'm searching for, that animating spirit, or sort of that desire to, that they're able to see the future and as a need that they're trying to fill, or a problem they're trying to solve. Do you see that sort of same vigor for change apply, for example, we know that redevelopment's coming to Mid-City Market, whatever attachment, a lot of neighbors might have, that place that's been there in its current capacity for all this time. I'm sure, again, we talk about, you get your phone calls and your emails about what does this change look like. We've seen some of those early, drawings and schematics. What is the sense you have that there's also this disposition to see that change as well, even for something that people have built up an attachment to and a nostalgia for a place like Mid-City?
Yeah, I mean, and I think we can honor the history. We can recognize that this is a generational build, and I'm very transparent with the developers from the beginning. As soon as we started to hear what they were thinking about, I want density, I want housing, I'll protect you from the NIMBY folks. If we can do this in a way that is best practice urban planning, mixed use. And basically the developers came back and said, I hear what you're saying, but what you want here is not feasible given the price point of this and the timeline that it would need to get done on in order to make this work.
They would argue it was going to take more time, more resources to achieve that.
And it is true. Building housing is more complex. There's a lot there. As soon as you start getting into height restrictions, the way that the oversight board there is the Bardstown Road overlay, like there's just a lot there that has to come together to make the economics work. They made a pretty compelling case that they couldn't do that. And then we were left with this choice of, do we fight what is coming that is, for what it is, really high quality? I mean, there is increased tree canopy, increased pedestrian access. There's some very strange bits to the long-term leases right on Bardstown Road. So there's some pieces you just can't do. Did I want housing there? Absolutely I did. I fought as hard as it was possible. We invited developers to come look. We ran 2 community meetings. We did a charrette session with what this could look like. And at the end of the day, this is a private piece of land that private developers made a plan on. The plan is pretty good for what it is. And we are certainly hoping that there's a permanent home for the library there. So, that's what I would say is, within the context of what is possible or happened. I mean, frankly, like if developers had said, we're going to make an offer and it's going to go 6 stories up, the property's been for sale for a long time. No one was hiding the ball. Nobody who wanted to do that stepped up and bought the property. So this is where we are.
And nothing to your knowledge that sort of, everything seems to be moving in time as far as the expectations on the timelines and the deadlines and all that?
Yeah. And what I would say, the other piece, that a number of local business owners and property owners approached me and said, hey, this statement of confidence by out-of-state developers who looked at our city and said, I'm willing to put tens of millions of dollars into the Bardstown Road Corridor because I believe in its trajectory. And they're signing a really long agreement here because they believe in what's happening. And what I heard from them was, let's capitalize on that. You could fight this thing and we could have 4 years of back and forth. But really what we need to be doing is saying, great, we got this anchor, this momentum. Let us honor the history of that space and let's keep building.
Mm-hmm. Still that trajectory, you say, like there's something greater down the road, figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you bring up, it's the business community and just people with such strong, like deeper ties to, this part of town. I'm always fascinated by sort of like handling you being the elected leader, but then navigating these discussions. For example, and maybe what was in our reporting a kind of subject matter that drew people's, concern, let's say, with the gun store coming into the build. And, the explanation, of course, I think in our reporting talking to you, you said, given current state statutes and laws, if everything else is done by the letter of the law, there's not much that, you could step in to pull a lever against them trying this. So does it speak more to what a relationship is between, families and the business community and the expectation you have for a store like this? And you clarified for me that, driving up and down, it doesn't seem like there's a certain profile or of the kinds of shops and businesses that we do see down the Bardstown Road Corridor. This would be an outlier.
Yes. And an outlier that is very consistent in the sort of business that we treat differently.
Mhm.
You know, we treat smoke shops differently than we treat a candy shop. We treat bars differently than we treat restaurants. And we should. I think, you know, when we're talking about a business that is targeting adult activities, then we put certain restrictions on that. And because of the way the national and state statutes are written, we can't do that with gun shops. I think that is wrong. But those are the constraints in which we operate.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that, you know, what has been happening has been made very clear to the landlord, to everybody. This is not what we want. And this doesn't help us build the corridor. And that's the, you know, when you get these synergistic businesses that help one another, when you've got a Carmichael's Kids, and then you've got a Lego store,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got, you know, a boba shop, where this is, you know, a candy store, like this creates the sort of synergy where people say, oh, Saturday afternoon, what am I going to do with my kids?
Sure.
Like, that's a great thing.
And understanding, you know, how all these businesses can work with each other, like giving the spacing and then leasing the stores that they are, and saying like, we're here, we think we're in a proper spot to attract the kind of customers
Right.
and people we're looking for. I don't know if it's just, we know to say that there are also other firearms shops around town. It's just, but again, it might speak to sort of the novelty of, you know, you unfortunately, for better or worse, you might stick out like a sore thumb.
Well,
and still handle the business accordingly, right? And be responsible business owners. I'm just curious if that's sort of been a work since the time we last talked to you about, like, have there been any more, you know, olive branches extended one way or the other, or is this just a matter of like something you're going to have to keep your eye on?
Here's going to be the test.
Okay.
Right. Assuming this store opens, if this store sells forearm braces for AR pistols, right? We now have even pro-gun folks in Frankfurt are saying these Glock switches and these forearm braces that turn pistols into automatic weapons are bad, right? Even folks who are far on the extreme of this think, this is not a great thing.
Which we've been reporting on. Just sort of now, there's, you know, police chief backing of the Glock switches, which then, you know, the pro Second Amendment side will say, you know, we're just trying to enforce what should be the laws already on the books, but at least going out there on the record to say, like, we just need to empower police departments to like stop, or, you know, to really hone in on this particular issue.
Good actors do not sell those things. Like, they are not intended for home defense. They're not intended for hunting. You do not want to use an automatic pistol to defend your house. You will kill your children, right? You use that to kill other people with ill intent. So that'll be the test. If this store opens, you know, if that's what they're doing, bad actor, we'll go from there. Now, what we are legally allowed to do, interesting question. But I think the piece that's really interesting to me is when we're starting to see the real synergy. So one of my favorite stores that opened, I think 2 years ago on Bardstown Road, Surprise Lily, great clothing store. Opening next door to them, House of Color.
Okay.
Right? So by the way, hot tip, I know it's just past Valentine's Day, but if you want to delight your significant other, get their colors done at the House of Color. It is so cool. My wife is now like, well, I should know this. I have the color swatches. I know what her colors are.
The degrees I can think of, you know, it's like knowing who, you know, the purples and whatever.
Right.
Fits
you're a fall, you're a spring, whatever.
Spring, yeah.
So, but that's the sort of like, okay, great. You've got this great retail establishment. You now have this group coming in. You can get your colors done. It's a super fun thing. And then walk down the street and get champagne brunch. And I mean, that's really the sort of synergy that we want to see. And we are seeing.
There anything, I know, it's always good to have, like, for example, the resource where you're letting folks know with the newsletter of things that are on your radar. I don't know if this speaks to sort of, general metro business that you're dealing with, or something specific to District 8. Are there other things on your radar right now that you're, A, interested in, and B, hoping to, kind of see what comes of it all?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a couple of places moving in. The restaurants and bars. We now have created within the Office of Public Safety in the mayor's office a very clear Bardstown Road. Here's how you give citizen feedback into what approvals are given. And we've gotten great feedback there. We need to continue that every time a new place opens that says, I want a 4 a.m. license to do this. Well, at Kentucky ABC, and I credit our local ABC and Brad Silvera in particular for his real pushing of them to accept citizen input as an important part of their process. And so that's how to do it. It's on our website also, Bardstown Road. You can give feedback there. And what we're seeing is, as we're having dialogue with folks, one of the restaurants that's opening right now, or one of the places that's opening, is called The Reserve. They initially opened with I think they asked for a 4 a.m., maybe they asked for a 2 a.m., but really it was they're a restaurant that wants to do blues, jazz, R&B, and I said, the community is really going to object to this. They're afraid from what had happened with the previous owners, and this wonderful owner said, well, I would have to set back my timeline for getting approval if I apply for a restaurant license. I was like, well, if you do that, the community is going to embrace you.
Okay.
So if I could make a call out, that's exactly what she did. She applied for a restaurant license, which means she has to operate only DoorDash until that license goes through.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to close at 12. So if I could make a call to our community, thank you to that owner. The wings and the lamb lollipops are amazing, and we need to support her because she is clearly demonstrating she wants to be a good actor in our community.
It's, it's sort of the gesture in good faith, as you would describe it. It's saying, and even then, you and all the stakeholders of the community understanding that it might have a goal of like that late night activity, but at least, the initial first, gesture is there and saying, like, I want to do this the right way.
Yep.
So just let me show you that I could. And then, I'm going to take it seriously as far as like handling my business the way I'm supposed to, and staying within the confines of what the conditions are.
And there is a fundamental difference between a 4 a.m. club and a 12 p.m. restaurant. And I think what we are hearing very clearly is, I credit Ben Botkins with this. We cannot let daytime Bardstown Road be held hostage by nighttime Bardstown Road. And I think that's really the momentum that we're seeing. I mean, I was told when I came in 2.5 years ago that we couldn't ever possibly pass a 4 a.m., reduce the 4 a.m., but I'm starting to hear that might be on the table again. And if it is, that's definitely something that I think we need to discuss.
We touched on a lot of different things that I did want to discuss with you. I don't know if there's anything else in particular.
The other thing I just want to call attention to as a city is the emphasis that we are starting to place, not just on making it easier to build housing, build everything really. And we're seeing the results of making that. I mean, we have reduced our time from application to approval of permits by 50%.
Okay. Could you talk at all about what was holding that back? Was that just a bureaucracy situation?
I mean, I hate to say that, but yes, I think that was we weren't all talking to each other. I don't think we had great systems in place. And I think we've gotten a real commitment from leadership to change that. I think that's one piece. We're making it easier to build everything here. And not everything should be able to be built everywhere. I mean, I do think there is a real process for what should be able to be built in certain places, but along commercial corridors, where we're already zoned for this, like let's go. Let's make that easier. Then I think the other piece that's really interesting right now is our emphasis on supportive housing. If we want to meaningfully address street homelessness, we have to create systems that enable the folks who are never going to be able to live without support to have that support. And, we're going to see several hundred units come online in the next couple of weeks. A community of care campus is great. We're continuing to invest in that. The initiative that's being led by United Way, the Home for Good initiative, is really powerful, bringing together the players around doing that. And I just think that's really exciting. It's important for us as a district. I mean, we have many units of permanent supportive housing in the Highlands that no one knows about.
And so is that just a victim of a lack of awareness, perhaps?
What it's great. I mean, you don't want to have here's where the supportive housing is.
Mm-hmm. It's just meant to be, tailored to a very specific group of people who do need it.
Right.
How do you reach them otherwise?
Right.
It's a matter of reaching them, not
exactly.
the wider audience.
And I think, Wellspring operates several that are kind of group congregate. There's a lot of scattered site. And again, I mean, we get almost no complaints about that. And that is good for us as a city. We need those spaces because the alternative is you're living on the street. And that's not good for you. That's not good for us. That's good for nobody.
Mm-hmm. No net societal gain on that part. Ben, just for the folks, the ways to reach out to you or to follow you as far as, all the comings and goings of business.
Yeah, our District 8 website is, I think we get the most traffic in the city. Our socials are pretty targeted and good. And our newsletter has all of the information and a really endless stream of terrible jokes.
Well, I mean, it's you being, terrible joke, self-sharing it with everybody in the district. It's, there's the transparency involved in that. It's just like, I want to share it, whether you laugh or not. Hey, I'll take the 2 chuckles if you let me know that those are funny.
If I could make one final thing that I just think was really powerful. So we piloted an initiative that we've already heard that other council districts are going to replicate. Before this winter, we made a call to people who say, are you willing to help your neighbors in the event that there's some kind of weather event?
Which what's the word I'm looking for? Serendipitous, or how much foresight was there?
Yeah, and then we said, do you know a neighbor who's going to need help? And when this crazy storm, thing that hit our whole country, we managed to meet every single reported need. And we got these just tearful thank yous for, thank you to Michael who came and shoveled my sidewalk or helped my car. I tried to pay him and he said no. And I just want to recognize how special that is, that our community really stepped up. And next year we will do a better job with sidewalks.
So is that perhaps the acknowledgement? And I think that speaks to, I always bring up the whole, you can't escape the phone calls and emails from some probably very frustrated folks that wish those were cleared.
Yeah. Well, the sidewalks are the individual people's responsibilities.
That's right.
And we're
perhaps it's those smaller roads.
Yeah, it's the smaller roads. And, we did better this time than we did last time. And we'll do better the next time than we did this time.
Volunteer network then? Sounds like I can be stronger.
Come to our website. We need more people on both sides.
Okay. All right. This is District Councilman Ben Reno-Weber. Ben, always good to have you here.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate you folks, as we're going to take a break and we'll be back, or depending on our timing for tonight, since news never stops. We'll let you know, of course, check in all our wave.com resources, our Wave online on social media, the Wave Now app. Appreciate your time. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Till then, take care.